Hi, everyone. I beg your pardon. Apparently, it's the big thing to do this week. You see, everywhere I seem to listen to any discussion, it's all about the pardon. Rabbis on chats that were supposed to be politics free self pardoned in order to address their personal views on the matter. Ethicists at a conference I attended earlier this week that had nothing to do with any political issues, but were focused on the family, spend precious networking time at meals debating the pardon. The pundits on the radio, as I sat in traffic and watched drivers cut one another off indiscriminately and without warning, again, were debating pardons and whether and when it is appropriately utilized as a tool as it was once earlier this week. Some argued that pardons for crimes were for sentences that were too harsh or unfairly meted out, but not to be used for family. Others argued that they couldn't fathom a father who would not, given the opportunity, shield his son from punishment and jail time. And given my inundation with pardon talk, I have the urge to do the same with you right now. I need to beg you and everyone else, I need to beg your pardon. You see, I like to look at world events and theological questions that develop because of them through the prism of the Torah. A rabbi, but also because I love to learn Chumash, my first thought is to look at the Parsha. And does our Parsha offer any perspective on pardons or begging them, or perhaps on the whole armchair discussion around it? I believe the answer is yes, but in a most unlikely way. Stay with me with this for a second. We tend to look at our parshios and the stories within them from the perspective of the good guys. And if we did so in this week's parsha, there's no question that the general theme of the parsha is the transformation of the protagonist, Yaakov Avinu, the downtrodden individual fleeing his brother, into Yaakov, the loving husband, with 4 wives to boot, revered father of 12 boys and their sisters, not to mention some of their wives and perhaps grandchildren, wealth magnate, and a leader of a small army of servants and maidservants. He came to Aram and Lavan, he saw, and he conquered. There's no question about it. Yaakov beat the odds. And what a message for Parashas Vayetze. But there's another perspective. You see, Parashas Vayetze is also a parsha with an entirely different perspective when we read it from the perspective of Lavan HaArami, Yaakov's uncle. Lavan, it seems, goes from the nice leader of Aram, who took in his flesh and blood, and then decided to gift the young man with on-the-job training and give him purpose. He later gives his nephew not 1, but 2, and according to other sources, 4 of his daughters as wives. He brings Yaakov into the family business of sheep herding, only to lose on his investment as the market seems to be stacked against him and Yaakov and towards Yaakov, because Yaakov independently became wealthy, while he lost his wealth, or so his sons declare. His ungrateful son-in-law alienates the family from him as they run away in the middle of the night. And just before he gets a chance to say goodbye, possibly forever, Hashem appears to him and warns him to not to speak with Yaakov mitov ad ra, from good until bad. Or in other words, don't speak with Yaakov at all. You kind of get a sad picture of Lavan, no? Do you feel a little bit bad for him when you look at the story through his eyes? So why don't we? What happened to Lavan's perspective and the sympathy that he should deserve? And why does Hashem not allow a dialogue between Yaakov and Lavan? Let their final meeting be one of a meeting of the minds and a departure in peace. Why no speaking of good or evil, tov ad ra? And moreover, it's the episodes of Parshas Vayetze that inspired the lowliest opinion of Lavan that we have at the Pesach Seder. You see, in the middle of the Pesach story, as we vilify the antagonist of Egypt, Paro, we note that Paro didn't hold a candle to Lavan. We contrast the evil intent of Paro wanted to destroy the males of the Jewish people, while Lavan, we are told, bikesh la'akor hakol, he tried to destroy everything. Really? Where do we find Lavan trying to do anything other than be a devoted family man? From his perspective, it's not his fault. I can almost hear him interjecting into our Seder, I beg your pardon, to defend himself. And why would he be wrong? Unless that is exactly the personality of Lavan. Lavan represents the personality that makes the rules to conform to him. He writes the rules throughout the parsha, and then he offers legal explanations as to why his activities were legally the right thing to do. In fact, the Ramban notes that from the moment he met Yaakov, he pretended to show mercy as it made his image look good, though he had Yaakov tend to the sheep even in the initial 30 days. And afterward, when he thought he could get more out of Yaakov, he added to the chore list by telling Yaakov that it was immoral for Yaakov to live a freeloading life. He had Yaakov choose a price, which Yaakov did very succinctly, only again to be cheated by Lavan, who instead of taking the blame, took umbrage at Yaakov's allegations of deception by hiding behind minhag hamakom, the local custom. And as Yaakov wanted to leave, Lavan tells him again to name his price, and they agreed on a deal, which Lavan changed 100-fold, and then hid Yaakov's sheep with a distance of 3 days. Again, as Yaakov runs away, it's Lavan who blames Yaakov for their departure suddenly, depriving him of a chance to kiss his own grandchildren. You get the picture. Lavan uproots not only the family by creating tension, he tries to uproot and twist the basic ethics of rules of ethics and morality and honesty so that they bend in his favor. The Maharal adds that he was so bent on his twist of ethics and the law, he wanted to uproot Torah, the Hakol, and its Hashem-based sense of proper conduct in the world, one of moral relativism and subjectivity, where he was always subjectively right. His power, his influence made sure that his might made right. I beg your pardon. There's no room for any sympathy for Lavan when you realize that this was his style throughout. He did just do evil things. He didn't just do evil things like Paro. He was a bad person. He was Lavan. He tried to destroy everything. Rabbi Yamin Sofer adds that this is exactly why Hashem warned Lavan not to speak mitov adra, from good to bad. Hashem told Lavan he didn't want Lavan to engage in any debate with Yaakov. He didn't want Yaakov to have to engage in a discussion of who did more for whom or who owed whom. For in the end, Hashem told him, the question is what the will of Hashem is. Each of you has that, and that alone to contemplate when you're choosing the proper way to act. If it's the will of Hashem, then it's tov, and it's the right thing to do. And if it's not, I beg your pardon, it's ra, it's evil. Any other calculation makes morality subjective, and that cannot be. And so after a week of debate with many different pundits of all different streams and stripes and parts of society weighing in on the news of the day, I have but one thought to add to the discussion on the table, and please pardon me for saying so. In any action or deed we contemplate, the only question we need to ask when we're trying to figure out what the right and moral thing to do is to ask what Hashem wants from us in this situation and mind the Torah to figure it out. Because in the end, our truest moral compass is not found in debates, arguments, or personal justifications, but in the humble and unwavering pursuit of understanding Ratzon Hashem, the divine will that guides us towards true righteousness. I could beg your pardon once again and go on, but I think you've already given me enough grace. Wishing you and yours a Shabbat Shalom and a Shabbat Shalom to all.